Welcome to On the Precipice, MUFON Contact Radio Program with your hosts, CJ Arabia and Richard Banasek, where discovery, disclosure, and evolvement meet. We are on the cusp of evolutionary realizations, technologies, and awareness. So come along and share in the adventure of discovery of who we really are and where we are going.
There we
Hello.
are again, CJ. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I was sick for a little bit, but I'm a lot better now. It's good to be back. Good to be
Very
recording.
nice. I know you weren't feeling well and you're under the weather and, you know.
I was not feeling well, so I am
life
happy
happens.
to be back. Yeah.
Like, the good thing is, you know, we had a couple of, we had some time off because of just the way scheduling works, which is always a good thing because then we get to spend time with our family and friends and of course appreciate what we're doing. So anyway, hey, welcome everybody. We're at it again, another episode, and you know we've been very blessed with this whole idea about On the Precipice and with MUFON Contact Radio, and we have another good guest for you today and an exciting case, and I'm really happy about that.
Yes,
but
we do.
before we get started, you know, on our journey of exploration and evolvement and disclosure, CJ, what's going on?
Hello. Hey, everybody. I'm CJ. Richard and I are field investigators here in Southern California, and we're both on the MUFON ERT, and which is the Experiencer Resource Team. And, you know, I just want to say to anybody listening right now, if you have seen something that you can't explain in the skies, you can't figure out what it is or had an experience, just go to MUFON.com. There's two big red buttons at the top of the page. You can't miss them. File your report. Depending on what you saw, you'll be sent to a field investigator, and you may even be put in contact with a member of MUFON's Experiencer Resource Team. And we've all been trained on how to help you and provide support to people who've had experiences, because I feel like that is, I know for a lot of years, you know, like I just always had my memories of what happened, but it's so different when you kind of make a report and you get involved and you join the community. And there's so many great support groups out there as well. And you'll learn about them if you make your report to MUFON and get to talk to somebody at the Experiencer Resource Team. What else? Let's see here. What are we doing? Oh, you know what we need is field investigators. We always need field investigators at MUFON, and that's really anywhere in the world. If you're listening in another country, there's MUFON International, and we all need field investigators in every country and every region. So if you're interested at all, also you can use our email address that we created, cjandrichard@gmail.com. We'll send you in the right direction. But you can also just go to MUFON.com and become a member, join, sign up for the, we get our monthly, I don't have my October yet. Did you get October yet, Richard?
You know, I get mine in digital form.
So in digital.
Which is the great thing about, that's the great thing about going to our online website. Not only could you join as a field member, but you could just join as a member and experience all the aspects, including the journal, which is a great booklet every month.
Yeah, it's exciting to get it. And you can look at cases, not all the information, but you can see cases and what's reported. All, you know, private information isn't there, but it's really interesting. You can look in your area, you can look at other areas, but you get access to a lot of cool stuff. And there's even an online, like, social media on there that I was doing for a while when I first joined. But now I'm busy doing cases, so I ain't got time for that.
I just want to say something about the cases, that so people know. MUFON is one of the oldest investigative bodies for citizens on this phenomenon that we call
continuous too. Continuous, since 1969.
You know? Yes, and so we've taken a very scientific and investigative approach. So we're very interested in sightings. We're very interested in reports. We also have a component where experiencers, those who've experienced contact, those who've experienced other aspects,
the human aspect,
a whole nother area. So it is something that we're very interested and very aware. We're made up of volunteers. We're made up of people who have passions for this, and believe in what we're doing. So please, if
Yeah.
you have a sighting, or if you have a question, or you have a contact, or you've experienced something strange and you want to have somebody from MUFON experience, people who've investigated stuff, we're interested, please contact us. And we also have a plethora of people who we can suggest to you in terms of whether it's groups, and CJ goes to groups all the time about people with their experiences. CJ, tell us about their group.
I love them. Well, yeah. And I'll find them. I'll Google them and just check them out. They're not all for me, but I've been to a bunch of online ones. But I really love is Yvonne Smith's CERO support group, and they meet in person once a month. And there's an online version of the meeting as well. And Yvonne mentored under Bud Hopkins. She's trained in PTSD, and she also does regression. So a lot of people have gone to her for regressions that are in the group. And I just love it. I just love going and hanging out with my people and talking, and people sharing stories and contact, and people present almost like, our MUFON meetings sometimes when you have a presenter, but they're really fun. And there's really whatever you're into, there's a support group.
Well, the thing that you mentioned is with online and the internet and everything, Zoom, you don't even have, you could be in the farthest reaches of the world. As long as you got Wi-Fi, you can Zoom into any one of these meetings and participate, meet people. And so it's there for everybody. So
there's people in the Ukraine, there's people all over the world that show up in these groups. It's time. Sometimes it's way in the middle of the night for people, but yeah, there's so many. And operators are standing by. Like, honestly, there's a lot of ERT people who would love to talk to you, hear your story, and help you out. And there are resources for you. So don't sit alone. You're not alone. You're not alone.
Right. And so I just want to make sure everybody, the ERT is the Experiencer Resource Team. Mm-hmm. And we're here to provide not only an ear and some experience, but also resources for those people who've had encounters or other related contact, if you will, with the phenomenon. So we have a bunch of people who are involved with our organization, and so we just want to offer those to everybody. So what else is happening?
Well, I was going to say, sometimes people will just say, like, you're the first person who didn't react like I was crazy when I told them this story. And like, yeah, that's what we can provide. So I just wanted to plug, we got Ruben and Alex who do MUFON Up Close, which is, we share the time slot with them. So this week is our show. Next week, their show will air, and vice versa, and they recently did a really interesting episode with Bob Spearing, which you should go listen to. Right. And Richard has a clip to play. You want to?
Yeah, here we go. This was on the show, and it's a very cool clip. We're just going to let it play, and then we'll come back in a second. Cool clip.
It is cool.
So, again, we'll let it go, and then it'll play itself. It's not going to last too long. Wow. These are cool sightings.
I mean, you would never see that.
No, and they're fast walkers or whatever, but I mean, they're just incredible how fast.
What are these little things that are in the sky shooting around all the time? I've seen them captured before. What are they?
I know, and it's amazing that people are catching this when they're doing drones. They're doing work and doing whatever they're doing with drones.
Yeah, I saw a reporter got some. I should find that link.
And then all of a sudden you catch this thing, and I know a lot of people haven't been able to see it because they slowed it down. But again, this was on their recent episode, and Bob Spearing with our organization was involved in that. It's a very good show. We have in our plethora of recent episodes on the show, so please go and check that out. We'll add it if we can to the page when we air this show, so that you can have access to that great show. He's
they're great investigators. I think I saw Ruben on one of the Missing 411 films. Is Ruben on one of the Missing 411s with David Paulides? I believe so.
Absolutely.
I thought that was so cool. I couldn't believe
they did a recent one too about the crop circle and crop circle formation.
Wow.
With one of the leading crop circle people, and I thought it was a very good show. So they're opposite us, so please catch their episodes every other week while you catch our episodes. So that was really cool.
Check them out. And then the one last thing I'll just say, and then I know you got some cool stuff to share as well, Richard, but Yvonne Smith, we were just talking about her. She's actually our next guest. So when you tune in next time, we're going to dive deep with Yvonne Smith from the Zero Support Group. So
we're real excited about that. And again, we want to bring these people to you. And the other thing that we want to make sure that we stress with everybody, CJ, because you and I talked about this.
Of course.
We're going to put up our email address again. And the reason why we want that is because please tell us how we're doing. Please tell us what you think we need to have on the show in terms of subjects or people or things that you'd like us to talk about. And if you have questions, we'd like to have questions. We can have a segment at this time. If we have 2 questions, 1 or 6, we'll ask those.
I'm going to say questions. I have an added incentive. I was cleaning my drawers. I do little handmade. I made these last year, these Christmas ornaments. So if you send us an email with a question, I'm going to pick someone and I'm going to in the United States, and I'll send you this little, and it has the word CJ in binary code on the back. So we'll give that away if you send us an email with a question or suggestion.
Right. Again, we just want to hear from you.
Yeah, anything.
So anyway, way cool. So I just wanted, one of the segments that we like to always pass on, besides our brothers from the other show and the other parts of the week, there's always a podcast out there. There's a lot of podcasts, a lot of really good subjects. So one of the ones that I just wanted to bring up and suggest, this one came up recently. And this is, as you know, this is News Nation's Reality Check with Ross Coulthart. The reason why I thought that this one was a good one, and there's the access from YouTube if you'd like to view it. This is, I think it's Mike Batista, and he is part of the psionics of Skywatcher, not our Skywatcher, but the Skywatcher program, Jake Barber and all that. And he uses his empathic or extra perception abilities to contact. But the slide on the right there, where I can see it, is a slide of a craft that landed, and he was able to take an iPhone video of it, and it's in the Reality Check episode, pretty long episode. But this is some cool stuff. I know it's very difficult to see because of what it mentions there, but you know. This is a picture of a craft, and in the middle is a potential being, and to the right of that, or my left, is another being. But it shows that he captured this. But again, we like to spotlight these particular podcasts because they add to just the overall science and the world at a current level about what's going on and what people are excited about. See, do you know any? Did you able to see this, or do you know what I'm talking about in terms of science?
I know. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I've seen shows on it. I watched the Skywatcher documentary that they did on all those guys going out there for sure, and I saw him. So yeah, and I, obviously seen many episodes of Ross Coulthart and many interviews with him.
Right, and the good thing about this, and this is what I like to say, the good thing about this particular type of stuff is that the fact that there's so much news nowadays, and the seriousness and the way it's viewed as a science-based thing, from whatever that extraterrestrial asteroid, comet, vehicle, interstellar, whatever it is coming through that object, to this stuff, not only the stuff that happened in Peru with the DNA and those things that they found down there, to that booger ball. And the other thing is the case that's coming up now. This is why we like to feature ERT-related cases about even some of the programs that are coming up that are very well received by the audience who watch it, one of them being Ancient Aliens, which has been on for a long time. So our guest today is going to tell us a little bit about the program of that show and how he was involved with it, and the case a MUFON case that he presented to them. So that's one of the things that we like to tell. So the other thing that we like to do periodically is we also like to just add pictures or videos. So this is a case that was done by Eddie Abbott has a website, and he does a lot on X, but he does a lot of Project Blue Book old cases. And so in this particular case, this is a 1959 Project Blue Book case. Of course, they initially said, well, we don't know what that is. But if you look at it, it's a cylinder picture that was captured, and then there were some close-ups. And for those of you who have larger screens, you can see it's a pretty cool picture. But anyway, this was a C-130, I guess that was flying anti-sub patrol over an area, and they caught this climbing at 28,000 feet. And you can see the ocean in it. So it was above that. The craft has holes, 6 of them, like windows, and there's no wings, no tails, no nothing. And it wasn't a blimp, and it wasn't some sort of submarine drone or whatever. The crew said it matched their speed, the people who took the picture. Then it peeled off like a shark, dove through the clouds, and of course it was gone. And Project Blue Book, tried to play it off and downplay it, but it's a very interesting picture. And as you can see, it's a cigar-shaped vehicle.
Looks like a musical instrument or something.
28,000 feet above the water. And so we want you to go ahead and check Eddie Abbott's page. That's his website. He's on X. A lot of good cases come up. A lot of these people are very serious about going through the archives, getting cases that you can't explain, that are unknowns, and then sharing it with the public and letting the public decide, what is. And there's so many things nowadays with the cameras, but I thought this was a way cool from 1959 old case. Again, that just shows you 1959. Yeah. So we know, things have changed, and this technology has been around ever since. So I thought it was really cool.
That is cool.
The other thing that I wanted to make sure that we saw with people is, and I don't know if did you recently get a chance to see any of the oversight committee that happened with the four whistleblowers?
Yeah, like a little while ago. Yeah, I saw that.
And, again, I've seen the others, and so this is another thing that we'd like to suggest to the audience. For those who haven't seen it, there's the website and the email click that you can access to it. But this was an incredible hearing. And these 4 people, as we all know, they were all military people. The guy from San Diego is still in the Navy, 1 Air Force guy, 2 Air Force guys, sorry. One, and this is what I want, another thing that our audience to know, he talked about the Vandenberg sightings, and we've done cases from Vandenberg in that area, Avila, I think it's called Avila Beach. I'm sorry, it's around there. But anyway, we've done cases around there. And so this particular hearing, I thought was probably one of the best that they've done. And the seriousness and the questions that were asked. So one of the things that we want to suggest to people in terms of educating is just to say, here's something to look at. It's not anything but serious investigation by the Congress into this whole issue of UAP, UFO, and where we're at and where we need to go and how we need to get there. So we on this show like to suggest these things. So if you get a chance, and if you're interested, even if you look at it for just a little bit, it's a cool show. Video.
George Knapp has some pretty cool testimony in there.
He does.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So we're going to bring on our guest just for a second before we bring them on. I just want to read a little bit about Tim's background, and only because it's very important, and he's a cool guy, and he's one of our guys on our ERT team and MUFON. So Tim Aines has a BA from Northwestern University and an MS from the University of Southern California in Systems Management. Tim is a lifelong student of the ET contact phenomenon and served 23 years as a senior intelligence officer in both the Marine Corps and the United States Coast Guard, where he interviewed hundreds of people on cases of national interest, including the UAP phenomenon. Tim has been a MUFON member and a very successful field investigator for almost a decade. And this is at the time that this was written. It could be probably longer than that. He working with experiences on a wide variety of encounters, sightings, and unexplained paranormal activity. Tim is also a logistics expert type of guy, having served as a chief of staff of the Crisis Action Team at the U.S. Transportation Command, where he was responsible for airlift and sea lift operations in support of worldwide military operations for the 2 years immediately after 9/11. Again, thank you for your service, Tim.
Yes, thank you.
Tim lives in Illinois and with his wife and his 4 grown children. His hobbies are books, film, logistics problems, and of course, anything to do with geographic and historical mysteries and MUFON related stuff. So without further ado, we're going to bring on our
I feel like an applause after that.
Tim Aines. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you. Boy, it's quite a lead in. I didn't recognize myself there, but that's
You've done amazing stuff, man. That's even more than I knew. And I was doing some Googling too. I mean, that's pretty cool. And thank you seriously for your service, man.
Well, thank you. No problem. You're welcome. I should thank you guys for your service. You guys are sort of continuing in the spirit of Earl Grey, right?
Yes.
Who's no longer with us, and you're kind of keeping the interest in this program rolling down the track and doing a darn fine job of it. So you should be commended. Thank you for your service, both of you, to MUFON and what you do.
So, Tim, tell us about Tim. Tell us who he is, where he was raised, school, experience, military life, work, retirement. And then after that, of course, tell us about your family. That's very important.
Okay.
And where you live. And then tell us about why MUFON, your own personal experiences, if you have any that led to it. And then we can get into maybe some of your cases that you thought were pretty cool. And then we have our primary case and focus that we can get into. So, Tim, who are you?
Okay, well, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. Grew up in a lot of the old classic Irish and Polish neighborhoods on the south side. Every house had a World War II dad, and a lot of those old Chicago bungalows didn't have air conditioning. They were built solid brick houses in the 1920s, and in the summer they would bake like brick ovens during the heat of the day, and so people would sit out on their porch at night after dinner to let the house cool off. And you had got this amazing education by just walking up and down the street and doing stoop sitting. And all these old World War II dads had the best stories, and they would teach you about life and things that you didn't want to know about and things you did want to know about it. So it was a great childhood kind of growing up. I had a very good counselor in high school who pulled me in junior year, and he said, "What are you going to do when you graduate?" And I said, "Well, me and a couple of my buddies were thinking of enlisting in the Marine Corps." And he said, "Well, have you looked at your grades?" Well, I said, "Yeah, sure." And he said, "Well, have you ever thought about being an officer?" And I said, "Well, kind of the hoorah mud Marine way to go is start out as a private and then work your way up to general." And he's like, "Well, you don't have to do it that way. You can start out as an officer." He says, "Have you ever thought about like applying to the Naval Academy or one of these officer programs or just scholarships in general?" And I said, "Yeah, not quite yet. I'm still a junior." And he said, "You follow me." So he took me out in the hallway. This is the sort of the pre-email, pre-internet days. And at that time, every school had a hallway where there were tear-off readers' reply cards for all sorts of things on the bulletin board for scholarships and college applications, grants, and all sorts of things. And he said, he took me out there and he said, "See all this stuff on the wall?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Apply." And I said, apply for what?" He says, "As the boldest experiment in human nature, do everything. Do one of everything, apply for everything." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" And
shotgun.
And he said, he said, "You'll have to sit for exams. You'll have to go for lots of interviews. You're going to have to write a ton of essays. You're going to need letters of recommendation." He said, "I'll give you the letters of recommendation." But he said, "What else are you doing after school?" So he says, "Spend the next 6 months doing this." And I thought he was kind of nuts. And I went home that night and he had pulled a pin on a hand grenade in my brain. And I came back to school the next day, and I went down that hallway, and I took one of everything off the bulletin boards.
Nice.
And I started filling out readers' reply cards or writing letters. And darned if it wasn't the most illuminating thing you've ever seen. So my mom was a single parent mom. You know, we lived in apartments up above, commercial businesses. We had modest means. And 6 months later, I spread out all my winnings on the table. I had been accepted to the U.S. Naval Academy.
Wow.
Wow.
I won a Navy ROTC 4-year scholarship good at 52 different schools. I had won an Army ROTC scholarship, good at like over 200 schools. I had won a dairy farmer scholarship, and I'd never even seen a darn cow in real life. But I had a
You must write a good essay. You must write a good essay.
Well, something, yeah, I guess. Or I interviewed well, or I tested well. I don't know.
Yeah.
But my mom came in and she was like, I would love for you to go to college, but there's no money. And I said, you don't have to worry about it, Ma. Take a look at this. And she started crying when she saw.
Wow, that's
everything.
Cool.
I would too.
So long story short, I decided to do the Navy ROTC scholarship because it was good at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois, which was not too far from home. And I suspected that I needed to not be too far away from my mom in case she needed some support for things. And you got the same regular officer's commission that you did at the academy. Right. And you didn't have to, get yelled at 7 days a week like you do at the academy.
And that's Hynek's school, right?
And that's Hynek's school. I have a whole separate Hynek story. Yeah. So I might as well tell it now since we're there. My senior year at Northwestern University, I was filling up my schedule for my last semester of senior year, and I had 3 like really hard courses that were going to take a lot of hours of study to get through, and I needed one more course, and it had to be a science course. And my roommate, he was in the same boat, and he's like, I need one more science course. And I said, yeah, me too. And we're like, oh man, I need something easy. I'm going to get killed by these other ones. I said, I need a real Mickey Mouse course. So we were going through the course schedule, and there it was, Introduction to Astronomy 101, taught by J. Allen Hynek.
Wow.
And so even then, as students in the 70s, we knew he was the UFO guy.
Right, Blue Book.
So we sat. So we both signed up for his course, and I said, "Oh, this is going to be great. We're just going to sit and talk about aliens and UFOs all semester." And we took that course. It was the hardest course ever. Yeah. Oh my God! You had to calculate apogee and apogee, planetary orbital, mechanics, and the power of exploding stars. It was a really rigorous course.
You know what I like about it? They said it was a survey course.
Yeah, it was Intro Astronomy 101, J. Allen Hynek. And
yeah.
So we go through this horrible course of, astromechanics and all sorts of advanced math. And on the very last day of lecture, before the final exam, he goes, well, today's the last day of lecture. I bet you all signed up for this course because you thought we were going to talk about aliens and UFOs. And we all went, yeah. And he goes, okay, well, today's the last day of the class, so let's talk about aliens and UFOs. And we all went, yay!
Yay!
And so he did. He talked about Project Blue Book and everything. But so I went on to, I wanted to be a pilot in the military, but the eyes slipped a few points in college. So I put in for intelligence work, and I got it. And I wound up going to Imagery Intelligence Officer School, which was basically analyzing aerial reconnaissance imagery off of aircraft, and at that time, spy satellites. And at that time, just the fact of that we had spy satellites was classified. You couldn't even admit that. But it was a very rigorous course. It was the first of several intelligence officer schools that I had to go to. This initial one was 6 months long. It was very technical. It's like measuring the length of a shadow taken on an image from a satellite, and then you have to figure out what the size of that thing is in real life, and you have to compute the angle of the sun and the time of day, and there's a lot of stuff involved. We started out with 44 people in the class. We graduated 13. The others got reassigned to other specialties, and to keep the pressure on, every week they would publish the class standings, and pretty quickly I was either number 1 or number 2 in the class each week. And this other guy, and this other guy was every other week, he was number 1 or 2. So he would beat me one week, and then I would beat him the next week, and this went back and forth for 6 months. And in the end, on the final class standing, he beat me by 12/100ths of a decimal point. He had a 98.72, and I had a 98.60. But in the process, we became very, very good friends.
Yeah, I was going to say motivators.
But that was kind of the pressure of the course. He was an Air Force officer. I was a Marine officer. So once we graduated from the schoolhouse, he went off to do his Air Force career. I went off to do my Marine intelligence officer career. But because he was number 1 in the class, he went to a place called FTD at the time, Foreign Technology Division. It still exists. They have another title for it now, but it's at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Right, it is
a place that many people who study UFO research.
What year was this?
This was 1980.
1980. Okay.
We graduated. We graduated in November of 1980, and he went off to FTD. And for those of you unfamiliar with FTD, again, it stands for Foreign Technology Division, and it was started in World War II when we would capture the latest German or Japanese fighter plane, and we would pack it off to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and we would tear it apart down to the last screw, sort of reverse engineer it, figure out what its strengths and weaknesses were, and then we could build the knowledge from that into our next generation of fighters, the F-4U Corsair, the P-51 Mustang, and all those war-winning fighters that later came out in the later part of the war. So then after World War II ended, the job of FTD went over to analyzing the communist world equipment, North Korea, China, Russia. So they kind of did the same thing. And now I know how FTD is organized, and the way it works is you are assigned a certain piece of geography or a certain military system, like a particular ship class or a missile type, and that's all you do every day. So, but if you have the geography part, let's say you're they put you on the desk for the Soviet Black Sea Fleet. So every day you look at the latest imagery from space that day on the status of the Black Sea Fleet. And if you do that every single day, you pretty much know every single ship in that fleet and where it is and where it should be. And at any given time, you'll see things like, 1/3 of the fleet's out at sea training, 1/3 it's tied up at the pier, refueling, rusting, and another third might be in the dry dock getting repaired. So so the reason they have you do that is that the analyst, you become the best person in the world to detect something afoot. And you're one of the first persons in the world, because if all of a sudden one day you look and everything is out at sea, every single ship is out at sea, that's considered an indications and warning or an INW intelligence trigger for potential war.
So those are flag indicators that, based on your intelligence,
right?
It brings a certain level of curiosity, and then you peel down or drive down and see if that means anything, and then you make a report.
Yeah, exactly.
Really cool. Really
cool.
I
mean, they get really detailed. Like, so if you're looking at the MiG-21 aircraft, and from looking at it, so let's say you're the MiG analyst, and all you do is look at MiGs all day long, and that there's 19 rivets on the right side wing of that plane. All of a sudden, one day you see one that has 23 rivets. Well, then it's like, well, there's some new capability in this aircraft. There's something changed. What is it? And so that triggers a whole analysis.
Wow.
Thing. So it's very scientific, technical analysis kind of stuff. So, and again, it's geography or military weapon system based. So 4 years go by, and I haven't seen. Let's call my friend Mark from school, the guy who was number one, who beat me by 12/100ths. I'm walking down the Pentagon, the hall of the Pentagon one day, and I run into Mark. And this is 4 years later. And I go, Mark, and he goes, Tim, and I go, oh my gosh, blah blah blah, and then I go, so what are you doing? What are you doing in the Air Force? He goes, I'm at FTD, and I said, so what are you doing there? I said, that's kind of long, and you're supposed to move like every 3 years in your officer career. You're not 4 years is kind of a long tour. That's like at the high end, and then you should move on to another assignment. And I said, so are you going to be moving soon? He goes, I don't think so. He said, I'm going to be there for a while yet. And I said, so what are you working on? He goes, well, I'm working on foreign technology. And I go, yeah, I know that. He goes, oh, what are you working on? He goes, foreign technology. And I'm like, what are you talking to me like I'm an idiot for? I go, I got the same clearance you do. I know you're working on foreign technology, but what are you? Are you the Baltic Sea analyst for the Russian fleet or North Korean missiles? What is it? What do you got? And he goes, you don't have clearance for this. And I go, huh? And I go, I got the same stuff you do. And he goes, well, it's, need to know special access. I go, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. I go, so, but come on, throw me a bone here. He goes, I'm working on foreign technology.
That's cool.
And I said, you got the alien thing. And
oh my God.
One of the reasons I picked intelligence, because I was hoping, well, I guess I should backtrack a little bit. One minor back step to my childhood. When all the other kids were signing up for Little League, I was like, that was about the time I found out about UFOs. And I was like, baseball? Pfft, like, who cares about baseball? There's people flying around in spaceships and there's aliens up there. I ran down to the library and read every book I could find on UFOs. And that's not an uncommon story among MUFON members because they've had a lifelong interest in this subject. And so, that doesn't make me unique at MUFON at all. But, but I wasn't too interested in Little League. I was interested in aliens and UFOs. So when I chose intelligence as a career field in the military, part of me was kind of hoping maybe I'll get access to the UFO secrets. And bottom line is I didn't, but some of my classmates did. And then plus I had enough encounters like this with friends. I'll call them water cooler conversations within compartmented information facilities where we could do sort of a talk around and you would know what everybody's working on. So, it really is a thing. There are people working in that field. And I don't know the details, but I've heard a lot through the years. A lot of it's kind of leaked out. But anyway, so Mark and I go to lunch at the Pentagon, and then we went into a skiff, and I said, I got to ask you about the alien stuff. He goes, I didn't say I was working on alien stuff. I go, yeah, excuse me, you're foreign technology. Yeah. And he goes, I go, why don't you alien guys just come out with it and tell this, do disclosure. All the polls show 65% of everybody in America, we all grew up with Star Wars and Star Trek. They could handle it. He goes, really? And I go, yeah. And he goes, so what day is it today? And I go, huh? And he goes, what day is it today? I go, it's Monday. And he goes, okay, let's say tomorrow, Tuesday, the president comes out and says, it's all true. Roswell really happened. Yes, we do have some crashed saucers. They've been coming here for a very long time, longer than before we were a country, and we can't stop them anyway. And the whole concept of airspace and national security is kind of ridiculous. Did you ever see a Star Trek episode where Captain Kirk tells Mr. Sulu, put us in orbit over Rigel 12, but avoid the airspace around that one country. Make sure you go around. So we, so the whole concept of airspace for the aliens is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So anyway, so he said, okay, so Tuesday, the president comes out, says, it's kind of all true. We don't mess with them much, and they don't mess with us, and just go about your normal lives, people of America. because they've been here for a long time, and there's nothing you can do about it. He goes, Wednesday morning, he goes, when you wake up, he goes, would you make your bed? I go, what? He goes, would you make your bed on Wednesday morning, the day after disclosure? And I said, yeah, probably, kind of out of just habit. He goes, would you go to work? I go, well, yeah, if I want to get a paycheck, and yeah, I'll go to work. He goes, would you keep your money in the bank? And I go, yeah. And what am I going to do? Stuff it in my mattress? And he said, would you pay your taxes? Would you continue to worship at the church of your choice? And I said, yeah, to all those things. And he goes, well, it's good that you say yeah to all those things, but the government is not convinced that the average person is going to say yeah to all those things, because you're talking about destroying a lot of people's worldviews of how they think the universe and the world works. And, there's going to be some people jumping off bridges. And, to sort of led credence to that, look what a few COVID germs did to the grocery stores. Well, when that came out back in March of 2020, you couldn't buy toilet paper for at least 6 weeks there, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry,
yeah.
It's a good place to take an off ramp. And here, what I mean is, you bring up an excellent point. You got people say disclose everything, catastrophic, disclose whatever you want to.
Catastrophic.
But the point that you make is this: if everything that you said was accurate from that guy, let's just say everything he said, and they've been here all this time, and there's whatever, the paradigm shift that would have to take, and people realize, well, just tell them it's okay. If it's like raising your kids, think about it. And that's the example that I'd like to, in this off ramp. Would you tell your kids about death, destruction, drug abuse? I mean, all the things that happen in reality of life. And what I mean is, those are just examples. But the point is that they're real things, and they're real things that they're going to. This is what disclosure would do to many folks. I mean, we're talking about if you just talk about the people who believe and who practice religious aspects, and that's their life. But the point that you make is a very, very good point. I don't think as a parent, I would tell my children everything. As they evolved and mature and I exposed them, I would start to maybe educate and hopefully bring them up to a place where they can handle it. But I wouldn't show them the boogeyman right away and say, here's the boogeyman, and you got to deal with it. The way people would freak out, and just in terms of the shock, and we know this just in terms of how traumatic incidents affect so many people. So my point here is, and I think that's where you were going, disclosure needs to be done not gracefully, but it needs to be done in the right reference, in the right frame. Again, I know that I'm the one saying this, guys. Tim's not saying this. CJ's not saying this. And I'm just saying that it needs to be done right. And it needs to be done where we're considering people and considering thoughts. And again, I just wanted to take that. CJ, do you have any thoughts about that? I know I went off a little bit. But.
No, I mean, I think that people are going to believe what they want to believe. And like, to me, it's not even an issue. Like, I've known since I was a child that they were real. I don't know who they are and exactly what they're doing, but it's just, my mind doesn't even think about disclosure, because I just live in a world where I've known since childhood, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that they were real. And I don't think they're that different than like, I feel like the religious people that might have an issue with this, I don't think they realize that, their God might just be an alien super being, for lack of a better words, and that it could mesh together actually quite nicely if they would allow that. And I just think there's some closed off, I grew up in a very religious household as well. So, but to me, it's always meshed, and it's all like all those stories make. I don't know if you ever, I've mentioned it before, the Bible and Flying Saucers. Barry Downing, our religious consult for MUFON, he kind of has a, I don't even know it's an opinion. It's just a hypothesis, but it makes perfect sense to me. So, like, if you get
it's funny that you say it. We talked about the UAP hearings here recently. Boylan, one of the guys who spoke, he made a comment, and he was talking about disclosure. And he says, "This is not for the people who from ufology. This is for the other people, and the other people. We're the people from ufology. We have our own thoughts and beliefs, but we got here because we believe this." But what he was saying was, and this is where Tim, and I know we're going to go back to you again, Tim, on continue your story because it's really good. But what he was saying is for the greater audience, the larger audience, and about how to get that message to them to where, like you said, CJ, they can decide for themselves, but also not scare the mess out of them, Tim, right? I mean, that was the issue. So let's go back to where you were.
Yeah, we don't want the stock market to crash and everything to end because people are freaking out.
We don't.
Yeah. He said, so that's Wednesday. You'll do all those things. You'll go to work and you'll make your bed and all that stuff. And then he goes, now, what are you going to want? He goes, if that's Wednesday, he goes, what are you going to want to know after you've had a little time to think about that by about Friday or Saturday of that same week? And I said, huh? And I was like, well, you already had disclosure. He goes, I go, well, I'm kind of a nerd. I would probably want to know like how some of those things work. He goes, exactly. He goes, you're going to want to know how those things fly. And he goes, we're not going to go there. And he goes, the world can't handle that knowledge and not destroy the global economy. And so I'm like, oh, is this the big oil conspiracy thing? And he goes, there's no conspiracy. He said, you know how many people are employed in the fossil fuel industries, all around the world? What if every gas station in the world wasn't needed, and anymore, and all the tankers at sea and all the oil drilling platforms out in the ocean and wells on land and people who work in the headquarters and the tanker truck drivers and I'm like, well, something like that wouldn't happen overnight. I said, that would take years to phase that kind of stuff out. And he goes, well, that's conversation for another time. And that was about the end of it. But it left me with that's as close as I got to, somebody on the inside, giving me some interesting
I
information.
wonder, have you read the book AD After Disclosure? Is that sort of, I think they kind of go down that bit of a scenario. I haven't read it either, but somebody was telling me about that book. Have either
Richard Dolan, Bryce Sable's book.
Yeah, I know. I've heard of it, and I'm familiar with the overview of it, but I've not read it.
I have it. I know it's dated, but I still bought a used copy because I'm a nerd. So I like to read them even if they're outdated.
It's a very well thought out book, and they're going to update it. By the way, they have a podcast, Need to Know, where both of them are on it, and they speak all the time about it, but it's a very interesting premise after disclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I tell people, I'm a MUFON investigator, you get some almost angry types. Sometimes they go, well, why don't you people just tell the truth? Why don't you, like we're the keepers of the secret or something? Right. And they said, when's disclosure going to happen? And I'm like, oh, I tell them it's already happened. And they said, what do you mean? I go, there's a book called The Day After Roswell by Philip J. Corso. I go, it's the guy who took the parts off the crashed flying saucers and parted them all out to major corporations so they could re-engineer it and give us things like fiber optics and microcircuits. And
great book, by the way.
And I go, and it's a first-person narrative. It's not a hearsay thing. I'm like, what more do you want as proof of disclosure? But his book published, it hit the bookstores on the same exact, almost to the day that Lady Di died in the tunnel in Paris. And the entire world's...
I remember the day.
Shifted
I remember what I was
doing. The 50-year anniversary of Roswell. Yeah.
Nobody was interested in a dying lieutenant colonel's book saying that I'm the guy who took the parts off the saucers and had them reverse engineered.
Right.
Wow.
That was like, kind of ho-hum. A few people looked at it, but everybody globbed onto Lady Di, and that stole all the oxygen out of the news media. And
guilty.
Yeah.
So
as your career has gone, and so how do we migrate into MUFON? And tell us a little bit about that. in this last probably about 8 minutes before we go to break, because then we got your case that we're going to talk about.
Well, again, having that lifelong interest in UFOs, I heard about MUFON early on, especially coming from the cradle there in Evanston, Illinois, at Northwestern University. Hynek talked about the invisible college, the people behind him, behind the scenes, who didn't want their names leaked out, and that were helping him doing a lot of his research for Project Blue Book. A lot of them were McDonnell Douglas engineers down in St. Louis and lived in downstate Illinois. And they were also, just because the Air Force pulled the plug on Project Blue Book in 1969, that Invisible College group of people said, that's nice, but we want to continue working on this anyway. And that became the core group that founded MUFON.
Right.
So I had been tracking MUFON all along, even when I was doing my military thing. But I didn't join up and become a member until the 2000s, because I had kids to raise and I was kind of busy. But I was always familiar about it, and occasionally I'd get my hands on a copy of the journal. And then I finally joined. And then as my conventional business career retirement loomed, I said, I really want to be a field investigator, because it's sort of a natural spin-off of being an intelligence officer. And people complain about the forms that we have, like Form 1, Form 30, and the stuff in our case management system. I love those forms.
Right.
I'm like, this is so natural to me. I'm like, this is just like intelligence reports in the government. Yeah. It was like nothing. And then people want to, I'm kind of concerned actually that people want to dumb down the forms and make them simpler.
Yeah.
And that flies in the face of where we're headed with like AI. Because with AI, you're going to want to be able to be sure, because we're a nonprofit and we don't have a lot of money and our computer system is always going to be a couple generations behind. We're eventually going to get to the point where our case management system for MUFON is going to be a voice thing where the field investigator is going to say, how many retired airline pilots within 32 miles of Indianapolis saw a UFO in the western sky on Tuesdays? Where's AI going to get that kind of information from? Well, if you don't populate all the fields on that form with that kind of what you think is needless minutia, you're not going to be able to do queries like that. So that's where it comes from. So,
and that's the whole idea about any kind of intelligence work or information work. Exactly. The more we're able to put in, the more we're able to paint or evolve a picture. And one of the ways I'd like to tell people about that, all you people who like the DNA work that some of the companies are doing about your genealogy and all that, the way they get that is to give data, and the way they get data is that people contributed to it. And the more data they have, the more they can peel down to HAP groups to specific geographical areas. So that's the reason why now you're not always been Polish, you're part Hungarian or part Ukraine, because now they got more information in there to tell.
There was a big update to the system. Like I remember I had done it a long, long time ago, and then I got hey, we made a little mistake. Now it makes sense. It makes sense now.
The point is you're right, Tim. It's more information and data, the better for us.
Yeah, you don't want to dumb down these forms too much, just because it's easier for you and it's easier for the, think of a crime report. Is there anything that's too much detail on a crime report? If you've been robbed or, somebody broke into your place, I mean, you want as many details as possible, because it's that little thing that trips the breakthrough. Just the other, you probably heard they caught and arrested the guy who set the wildfire out there in California. Mm-hmm. You know how they got onto him?
Yes.
AI.
Yeah, he was using AI. To do queries about setting fires and how to conceal them and what's the optimal way to set a fire and not get caught. And there you go. That's the kind of information that cracks open wide breakthroughs.
So how long have you been? For those, so tell us a little bit. You're the you're the assistant director of the ERT. Just tell us a little bit about that and your work before we go to break.
Sure. So I'm dual-hatted like anybody on the ERT. I work for my state director, Sam Maranto, who's the Illinois state director, and I get plain vanilla, citing cases still assigned to me from the Illinois state director. but I'm also on the experiencer resource team, which is our handpicked team of about 65 people around the world who are more handpicked. They tend to be a little more gray haired, and they have gentler, more compassionate, but also wise and very smart backgrounds to comfort people who are alarmed from alien contact or abduction incidents, but also passively be doing a quiet, passive investigation and collecting information without coming across like Joe Friday and Dragnet, like, what'd you do? What'd you see? What'd you? That's not how we do it in ERT. We're sort of calming, passive, quiet collectors.
Helping first, and then
right.
And it explores the other aspect of what we believe the phenomenon really is, and that's about who's driving it, where they're coming from, who they are, and then how they are interacting with our people on that particular level,
right?
Personal level. So,
and it used to be, Kathleen Martin started the group, and you kind of had to know Kathleen Martin and sort of apply to her if you wanted to be on the team. But there's an application process now. It's a 3-page application, and then you have to do 2 interviews. One with Wendy Jaglarski from our team, and the second one is an oral interview with me, and it's an hour-and-a-half interview. In the first 45 minutes, I just quiz you on what we consider common base knowledge of abduction history. If you don't know what the Pascagoula incident is, you don't know who Travis Walton is, you've never heard of Betty and Barney Hill, you're not ready to be on our team. So we ask about 45 minutes of those kinds of questions. And then we switch to a role play where I'm the person who's had the alien contact, and you have to interview me. And then I kind of throw them a bunch of curves and see how they handle it.
Wow, that is real cool. So that's a good segue to our break, and then to a case that you as an ERT member received, and then how it evolved. So after we come back from the break, we're going to use an actual case and how it evolved and what was created as a result of that. So we're going to go to break now. So we'll be back with you all right after the break.
All right.
Okay.
Hold on to your seats, Cosmic Explorers. KGRA Digital Broadcasting, the unrivaled #1 source for raw, uncensored paranormal and UFO talk radio, has just unleashed a sizzling online merch store. Stay cosmic on the move with accessories, rugged phone cases, vibrant yoga mats, and notebooks perfect for jotting down UFO sightings. Ignite your obsession with the unexplained through bold, exclusive gear that demands attention. Kicking off with the Supernova, the store launches 2 heart-pounding collections, KGRA Digital Broadcasting and Bishop James Long. Every item you grab helps power the network and its groundbreaking shows. Stand with the truth seekers. Act fast, score your stellar swag, and join the uprising today.
So you don't care about his life. You just care about covering up your little top secret stuff going on. Meanwhile, this man's dying. how dare you put these people in the military to defend us? And then when they come out, you just kick them to the curb.
MUFON is the voice of thousands of like-minded people who want to see change. We speak up against UFO secrecy. We engage governments and agencies around the world on the topic. We share information with the public through our journal, website, newsletter, social media, and even our own TV channel. When you join MUFON, you add your voice to the cause. Few things are more important in our time than understanding the UFO question. Join MUFON. Find your friends.
Wow, welcome back to the second half of our show with
Hello.
Tim Aines, our Assistant Director of our ERT team, Experiencer Resource Team with MUFON. So Tim, during the second half, so I want to just lay the groundwork here. I was able to read a very good book, and it was called Angst in the Shadow. And to be honest with you, I got it from watching Linda Moulton Howe's podcast. You know, we all are constantly, CJ and I talk about, and I know you do at MUFON, especially as investigators, we're constantly reading, studying photos of objects and crafts, the skies, planets. We're constantly looking just to educate ourselves. But this book was a real cool book. And then I got to one of the chapters that talked about MUFON, and of course that piques my thing. And I saw your name and all that, and I knew that it was you made a presentation at our recent international symposium in 2025 here, and so I contacted you, and you were gracious enough to come on, and so you lead us. I have your presentation. You tell me what we want to do, and I got to hear about this story and how it's evolved. So take it away.
Okay. So before we start on the slides, I'll just give you some of the verbal background. It was a regular MUFON case that came in through our case management system. It got assigned to the ERT because there was alien contact. And the guy said, well, I went to bed and I woke up floating over my garage floor. And so I said, oh, this is kind of a different one. And so the deeper I got into the case, the more it just blossomed and bloomed. And I said, oh my God, this thing is huge. And at every step of the way, he came across very credible. I kept checking off the markers on our ERT data sheet, the things that we look for that lend credibility to the case. And, he checked off a whole bunch of them. And he wasn't looking for attention. He wasn't looking for personal gain. He does have this book out now, but that book came out after the case was done, and I might have had a part in it because I said, your background as an art director, maybe you could use your skills to produce a graphic about this floating over the garage floor thing, and so we'll get to that. But so before we go into the deck here, you're going to see two kinds of grays mentioned. There's the short grays, and then there's the taller grays. And I think they're very kind of different species, even though they kind of look similar. The short grays are sort of amiable meat robots. They're the ones that come and invade your house and disturb you in the middle of the night. And for the most part, they take you to the tall grays who seem to sort of be the bosses. And Erik says he doesn't mind the short ones. He's used to them snatching them, but he said the tall ones are a-holes in his vernacular. So let's why don't we we'll get into that. So this is called When Worlds Collide, Living with Extraterrestrial Contact. Let's go to next. So Erik is now a 56-year-old unmarried male college graduate from suburban Chicago with an autistic daughter. He was interviewed this week a year ago, and he has continued to provide extensive follow-on information. And I think because of his own interaction with MUFON, he's sort of grown and blossomed. And he's gone from hiding in the shadows to he's openly exploring and talking about what he thinks. He actually has a second book out now after Angst in the Shadows, and he's got one called A Blood Covenant, The Alien Agenda Behind Civilization. And so the first book is his biography of his life and how the aliens abducted him. The second book is his hypothesis on what it's all about and how, and that's that we could do a whole show probably on his theories on that. But so he leads a conventional life, but he's been continuing. We conservatively, mathematically figured he's had over 70 experiences with the Greys.
Wow.
That appear to have been multi-generational. Now, it's not an uncommon thing to see that abductions run in families. So get somebody who's scared, they've had an abduction that they have some recall or memory of. They're usually kind of out there a little bit and they're a little nervous or shaky. So, you calm them down and you listen to let them tell their story. And then at some point, I kind of gently ask them, have you shared this story with your parents? I ask them, are your parents still alive? And they'll say yes or no. And if they say yes, I'll say, have you shared this story with your parents? And most often I get the reaction I get is no, my parents think I'm crazy, or no, I'm not comfortable with that. But I go, I kind of recommend you do. You might get an interesting response back. So in the cases where they do, about half the time they'll come back and go, oh my God, I told my mom and dad, and my mom said it happened to her when she was younger, and she never told anybody, and now she knows it happening to me, and he's kind of freaked out. And I said, okay. I said, are your grandparents still alive? And then I say, well, go back and ask them if they're still alive. And in the cases where they are still alive, I say, go ask them, because that generation really never talked about this stuff. They were afraid of winding up in straitjackets. So, and again, where the cases are the grandparents are alive, about half the time they'll come back and go, oh my God, Grandpa said it happened to him during the Great Depression and he never told anybody. So now we have we can prove multi-generational things that are going on within a family. And this is not uncommon. My personal experience, probably 40 to 50% of all my ERT cases, when I dig deep and gently with the person, we find that there's a multi-generational thing going on. What's interesting about Erik is that Erik has a 20-year cycle where there's a big uptick in surges. So in addition to having the aliens drop in and check on whatever they check on with each generation, because they're following something genetically in the family chain, Erik's family has a 20-year uptick surge. Okay, so this case was also on Ancient Aliens. That process happened because Ancient Aliens approached us, the Prometheus television people, and they asked, do you have any cases involving abduction that you could share with us that might be worthy of being put on a TV show? And when somebody asks us that, our shields kind of go up. Our first thing we do is we start going into, sorry, we don't give that information out, that's confidential, yada, yada. But if it's a credible source, if it's a known television production studio, or your Steven Spielberg, I guess, we put together an executive committee of the ERT, about 10 people, and we go through, we get about 8,000 cases a year at MUFON, and about 700 to 900 of those wind up being ERT cases. So we went through the take for the year, and we identified 5 cases that we thought were worthy of being on a television show. But first, we went back to all 5 report submitters and asked them, are you comfortable having this put on the TV show? And if so, they'll get in touch with you to ask you to be a talking head on the TV show. And if they do, that's between you and them. MUFON doesn't have any interest directly, and we step out of the picture. We don't have any financial dealings with it. We don't get any money from it. But they do pay a little honorarium to people that are on the show. It's $250, by the way. So if you think you're going to be, if you think you're going to get rich being a talking head on the Ancient Alien show, it's $250 plus your airfare and hotel bill. Anyway, so we submitted 5 cases to them. They took a look at all 5. They said there's 2 that we're interested in. And the 2 they're interested in were both Illinois cases. This is from a worldwide group of cases. So one wound up being my case, the Erik Nanstiel case, and the other wound up being Wendy Jaglarski's case, who's also on our ERT. Anyway, so this is Erik's case, and it was filmed and finally presented on TV on Ancient Aliens on History Channel on September 21st. And it's still available out there now for downloads as needed. So next. Okay, so we got to start here with Erik's mother. So this is Erik's mother in 1950, and she lives in a place called Turtle Creek, which is on the remote suburbs of Pittsburgh. And it's on the sort of the edge of coal mining country. But go back to that picture a second, please.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So it's rolling. It's coal mining country. There's rolling hills with a train yard down in between the 2 hills that she lives on the top of the hill. And so remember kind of what that geographic background looks like in that photo, the train yard and the sky and everything. Okay, now go to the next slide. Okay. So in the summer of 1953, Erik's 2 uncles see a UFO above that very train yard in that photo, and they run in the house to tell their sister, who is Erik's young mother, about it. And she runs outside, but it's a flash go kind of thing, and the UFOs are gone already, so she doesn't get to see the UFOs. But her 2 brothers give her detailed descriptions, so she's very disappointed. But that's not all that happens that day. It's a very memorable day. Later that night, she's in bed and she's sleeping, and she's up on the 2nd floor of their house in Turtle Creek on Clugston Avenue, and she has this irresistible urge that someone is mentally calling her to come down to the basement. So she gets out of her bed in the middle of the night, and she leaves the 2nd floor room. She goes downstairs into the living room and kitchen, and she goes to the basement door, and she opens it. And next slide. And she finds 2 snarling German shepherds on the steps. Now, this was a closed basement door. There are no other doors to the basement. Once you're in the basement, it doesn't open up to the outside at all. And the family does not own any German shepherds. And the snarling dog thing is something we've seen in alien abduction or alien contact cases, where we call it a screened image or a screened memory. It's the aliens have the ability to take something traumatic or alarming that you saw and replace it with something else that is more familiar to you. And in this case, we believe she actually saw 2 aliens, but they were, in her mind, snarling German shepherds. We've seen snarling dogs, by the way, in like Men in Black cases, where there's a case that I read in detail. The Men in Black were inside a person's home in their living room, sort of threatening them and doing the usual Men in Black stuff, saying you didn't see anything, forget you saw anything. And they left, and they shut the door behind them. And the homeowner, only 3 seconds after they shut the door, had one last thing they wanted to say to him. And they popped open the door after only like 3 seconds later. and there were two snarling dogs on the front step. The men in black were gone, and there were two snarling dogs instead. So the point is, we've seen the snarling dog thing before,
Right.
and so she's pretty terrified. Go to the next slide. The dogs lunge directly at Erik's mother, and upon contact, everything goes blank. She wakes up the next morning, back in her second floor bedroom, all tucked in, with no memory whatsoever of how she got up there. But for the rest of her life, she has a lifelong fear of German Shepherds. Next, please. So now we got to jump ahead 20 years. We could spend another 2 hours talking about this case, so we're going to have to do some, in the interest of brevity in your show here, we're going to have to do some leaps. 20 years later, Erik is now married. Erik's mother is now married, and they're living in a suburb of Chicago called Des Plaines. Yes, we pronounce it Des Plaines, not Des Plaines. We have a town downstate called Versailles, too, if you can believe that. And she has this vivid dream where she's being chased. Her and her family are running down the street, holding hands, and they're being chased by orbs. And in her dream, the orb catches up, and when they do, they snatch baby Erik and take the baby away, and she's kind of panic-stricken. And if having this dream just once isn't enough, she winds up having it multiple times. So there's something going on. But meanwhile, back in the physical, real world of Erik, this is what Erik's experiencing. Go to the next slide. Erik is a toddler in a crib, and he has multiple memories of being tucked into the crib at night, and the adults turn out the lights and close the door. And not long after that happens, a ball of light comes into his room, and it comes through any part of the room, sometimes through the ceiling, sometimes through the wall, sometimes through the closed window. But most scarily of all, it comes through the closet door many times. And when you're little, that's the most terrifying thing of all, because that's where the monsters live. They live under your bed and in the closet, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why he remembers that. So this gives Erik a fear of closet doors that lasted into his adulthood. And next slide. And the ball of light slowly moves across the room. It doesn't charge at him, but it slowly comes across the room, and it comes and stops in front of his face, and then it kisses his forehead. And at the exact second it touches his forehead, everything goes blank, and he wakes up in the crib just fine the next morning. And this didn't just happen once. This happened many times. So now we got to jump ahead 20 years. Now it's 1994. And Erik is now living in Wheeling, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. He's single. He's in an apartment room all by himself. And he's having this very weird, strange dream. And it's a dream of a detailed, mesmerizing, sort of hypnotizing dream of a maple leaf with a bright white light behind it. And you can see all the capillaries and veins and the leaf, and the light is sort of dancing through the veins. And it's very hypnotizing, but there's a voice in his head that says, telling him, this isn't your dream. This is somebody's putting this here. This isn't your real dream. Wake up. And so he forces himself to wake up. And when he does, he finds 4 short aliens in black jumpsuits standing around his bed. And 1 or 2 of them are doing something on his torso. And they seem completely surprised and astounded that he woke up. And next slide. They then blow right out of the room, but he said they did it in a really interesting, strange way. He said it was like a Pac-Man game or pearls on a string. They were equally spaced. He said their feet weren't actually touching the floor. And he said if you could imagine like somebody pulling a string of pearls through a closed door, that's what it was like. He said they just went boop, 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 right through the door, equally spaced on the ground. They were sort of like a Pac-Man chain in a game, you know. That's and so let's go on to the next slide. All right, so now we get to the real meat of the story. And 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. This starts a 4-year period where he is regularly visited every 5 to 6 weeks without fail. He has some kind of alien contact, and this period starts with the arrival of Skinny Bob and a person I'm going to call Big Bob. Go ahead, next.
How old is he at this point in his life?
He's 56 now, so in 2020 he would have been like 51.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
So 2020, he starts noticing odd bedroom things going on. He sleeps with earplugs most nights, and occasionally he takes them out mid-sleep, and he sort of just tosses them on the dresser next to his
Tim,
bed.
I want to ask just one thing because you made a point, and I just want to make sure everybody understands. You found, and we've also found in other cases, that these events can have a start, and then there could be a good amount of time between the next time they have contact. In this guy's particular case, I think you said they were like every 20 years. So in between that time, they really didn't have or remember anything. Is that correct?
Well, as far as he remembers.
Right,
yes,
that's what I'm saying.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then when it starts, he doesn't have one off. He has every 5 to 6 weeks for 4 years straight, and then it kind of ends, as you'll see here. So he takes earplugs out of his ear, throws them on a dresser one night in the darkness, and he knows kind of where his dresser is next to his bed. He gets up the next morning, and the earplugs have been lined up and standing up perfectly straight. That somebody placed them there, and there's nobody living with him that can do this. He sleeps with a comforter that has horizontal stripes. So the stripes go this way across his body when he has the comforter over him at night. One morning he wakes up and the comforter is laying perfectly flat. It's not all tussled and turned. It's laying perfectly flat, but the comforter has been turned 90 degrees and the stripes are vertical on his body.
My goodness.
He keeps a sleep mask and a back scratcher on that dresser that's within reaching distance next to his bed. And one morning he wakes up and the back scratcher and the sleep mask have been tucked in neatly under the sheet next to him. Like somebody placed it there, like, here, I'm going to put it closer to you in case you need this. Every 4 to 6 weeks, he notices he wakes up on a given morning and his right ear throbs, like something large has been in his right ear. That's been kind of stretching it a bit. And it's not his earplugs because those are comfortable. And after he wakes up, after a few hours, the throbbing goes away and the ear's fine. Until 5 to 6 weeks later, there'll be one morning where the ear's throbbing again. It's always the right ear. And after a few hours after wake up, it goes away. But we've all had something like maybe uncomfortable and large in our ear where you can sort of know what that throbbing is like. So other items get moved around the room and are different locations. So Erik concludes that somebody has been visiting him at night and there's nobody else there. And based on his family experience and the balls of light in the crib and the maple leaf dream, he hypothesizes with all that and the family history that it's ET's visiting him, but he has no memory whatsoever of any of these abductions in this current period. So he doesn't mind the visits and he kind of knows that he can't stop them, but he doesn't like the fact that he can't remember any, and that kind of bugs him. So he concludes they must be masking or wiping his memory of the visits, a common thing that we see in abduction cases all the time. And so he decides to conduct an experiment. Next. He decides to put up a poster next to his bed saying, "I want to remember your visit. Let me remember you. I will not harm." And to make that poster, he decides he needs an image of an alien. So he goes out to the open internet and he finds that 2011 Skinny Bob video. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Skinny Bob video, there's this controversial, unproven, but very interesting video of supposedly a captive alien that the government has in captivity, and it's sort of leaked footage of him the alien is walking around and moving around. And Erik went out there not to prove or deny the video. He just wanted a copy of the image for his poster, and that's what he did. So he downloaded a picture of Skinny Bob. Okay, next. So this is the layout of his room. He has sort of an Egyptian decoration motif for his bedroom. If you want to know why, there's a whole story behind that in his book.
Hey,
but
Tim,
go ahead.
Didn't he do all these? He did all these, didn't he?
He did.
He's the one who created them.
Yeah, he did. He has a background in graphic arts, and he went. We asked him to do one slide for the case file, and he said that triggered a whole bunch of memories just doing this slide. And I think I need to do some more, and he did. And I think he wound up doing about 15 of them, and almost all of them are in this presentation. So this artwork is all Erik.
And this is his own recollection and his own creation, and
Correct.
To me that's significant because it's significant when they do it.
Correct, and it's his skills, and he has the skills to do it. And there's the poster, if you can see it on the wall. So he's trying to show proportionally what it looked like in the bedroom. So he puts that poster up next to his bed, right in that spot. And 2 weeks later, next, this is how you find out that aliens can read posters. You wake up floating over your garage floor.
You call them, they call back.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the start of his book, and this is what started the MUFON case with us. And when he described, this is the most jarring scene to him because it started his journey. And I said, well, this is such a vivid description. I think you should use your artistic skills to produce a slide or some graphic representation. So he did. He went away for about 3 days, and he produced this graphic. And then he came back and said, boy, that really triggered a whole flood of memories. I got to do some more graphics. And so
Wow.
he did. But to set the scene here, he's paralyzed. He's floating above his own garage floor in what he clearly recognizes as his own garage and his own SUV. And he is floating, and he's leaning about 20 degrees off the vertical and being positioned in such a way as to look at an alien that's standing on the ground who looks exactly like the Skinny Bob in the poster. Now, is this what the alien actually really looked like? Or because Skinny Bob video is true? Or is this another screen memory like the snarling dogs? And this is what maybe they think they expect him to expect it to look like, whatever. And then, so he's kind of mystified as to why am I here? Why am I looking at an alien in my garage? And why am I floating over my garage floor? And then the other thing that mystifies him is you see here some static rays of light coming in through the window, but they're actually, in real life, they were tumbling bright white beams. And then the beams were tumbling around each other. And that confused him because he has a detached garage. I've seen it. I've been there. And it's not part of the house, and there's absolutely no light source out there that would create that. Mm-hmm. So while he's wondering where these light beams are and what this alien wants, the alien says, next slide. The alien talks to him telepathically and says, "We can't let you remember our visit or my superiors will know about it." And poof, just like that, he wakes up back in his bed the following morning. And except this time he has total recall of that visit. And so he starts thinking and analyzing this whole experience. And he's like, okay, I guess that got a reaction, that poster. But why did it seem like some sort of conspiratorial sidebar? Why was there only one alien? Because they usually show up in teams. This is a consistent thing. You almost never see one who comes to visit you by themselves. It's groups of 2, 3, and 4, normally 3 or 4. And this was just one. And what's with the garage thing? And in our abduction cases, Erik reasons if they wanted to give me that message, they could have taken me to a ship or abducted me to some alien location, or they could have just woken me up in my bed and told me, what's with the garage thing? Why did they have to take me out to the garage? And to be sure, that's the first garage abduction case I've ever seen or heard of, where they wake up in their garage. So that's, that's what kind of made the case stood out, and one of the things that made it stand out. So that's happened, and he's kind of processing all that until next slide. Until 1 week later, the superiors arrive. So now it's not a 5 to 6 week break; it's only 1 week later, and he wakes up in his bed, paralyzed from the waist down, and
Wow.
he kind of tends to sleep with his arms above his head like this, and his arms were paralyzed; he couldn't move. But the alien is floating right above him, and it's a large gray, and there's 3 of the smaller ones that more skinny bob looking standing next to the bed, and he telepathically gets a message that says, "Look into my eyes, just look in my eyes." And this scares him, so sort of a fight reflex, he immediately says to himself, do anything but not look at this alien's eyes. So, but it's kind of hard to do because the alien is completely filling up his whole field of view, and there's not much you can look at. So go to the next slide. So he decides, I'm not going to look at him in the eyes, but I'll stare at his shoulder.
Wow.
But an odd thing happens. The longer he stares at his shoulder, the more intrigued he becomes by it. He goes, look at the color, look at the texture, look at the musculature. And it doesn't seem to be like a lot of fat under there. And he has this thought, I wonder what it would feel like to touch it. And instantly, the second he had that thought, his left hand was released. And so he took his left hand and he ran it up and down the large gray alien's shoulder, kind of slowly, and the alien just kind of floated there, tolerated it. And he said it had the effect of calming him down. He said he kind of felt much more calm and peaceful after running his hand on the shoulder. And he said, okay, I'll look him in the eyes now. I'm ready to look him in the eyes. So he does. He looks him in the eyes, and the alien bends his head down and touches his forehead to Erik's forehead. And boom. Next slide. He's standing on a cobblestone street in some town in Bavaria.
Jeez, holy moly.
And I'm like, Bavaria? And he goes, I don't think I was in the real Bavaria, but he said, if you had to say there's such a thing as a Star Trek holodeck, I felt like this was some kind of contrived environment designed to make me feel more calm or at home or something.
Wow.
And I said, so do you have German ancestry? He goes, well, I was born here in Illinois, and I've never been to Germany, but on my father's side of the family, they're very, very German. They have strong German ancestry. And he said, I had recently been doing some genealogy, so maybe they found something in my brain that thought that was comforting, and they put me here. So what happens here is, again, I'll have to abbreviate it. He has a multiple question and answer session where he starts asking questions of this large gray. And switch to the next slide. Go next slide. And the 3 go back.
Sorry.
Yep. And the 3 gray aliens turn into little Bavarian girls, complete in little Bavarian girl costumes.
Holy moly.
But he knows that it's a screened image, that he knows that they're really still the 3 small aliens.
It's the high strangeness.
But again, he thinks it's to try to make him feel more comfortable. Yeah, one of the questions he asks him, he says, do you have a name? And the alien says, yes. And he says, what's your name? And he said, phonetically, it sounded like Sizzlick. They continue. He asks him several questions. He said, he had just finished reading about the planet Serpo, Erik had, and trying to bone up on this phenomena. And he said, do you come from the planet Serpo? And the alien said, no, we don't call it that. And he proceeds to describe and talk about his planet. And again, in the interest of time, we'll have to kind of move on. But this session kind of ends with the middle girl steps out, takes a step forward, and says, we were told no, you know, you're nice. We were told you're mean. And he's kind of taken aback. He says, well, why would you think I'm mean? And everything goes black, and he wakes up back in his bed next morning. All right. But it seems, but Page has been turned. It seems like he's sort of passed a test with this large gray alien. And they seem to, in his 4 to 5 to 6 week abductions for the remainder of this period, they seem to allow him to have retained memory now. And in some cases, complete recall, in some cases, only partial recall. But it's almost like maybe it's a little bit of a trust test on the alien's part. Let's see what the human does with this knowledge if we let him remember some of this stuff. So let's go to the next slide. So this is just one of the 5 to 6 week visits. And it's just a thing where he wakes up one time and there's 2 of the smaller gray aliens floating over him. And again, they're working on his torso. They're doing something on his torso. And I have to kind of use my hands to show it. He said they just changed positions midair, and he thought it was interesting. One kind of flew over and around the other, and the other one just moved over to change positions. And he goes, that's it. That's all he remembers from that contact was he wakes up, they're floating, they change positions and flew over, and then everything goes black. That's it for that slide. Okay, now, starting July 2020, he has what we call the Black Cone Semen Collection visits. And he goes to bed in the normal manner. They wouldn't touch this part on Ancient Aliens, by the way. They only covered about 20% of his case on the Ancient Aliens show. They left out all the stuff you're going to see here.
Yeah.
He goes to bed wearing pajamas and tucked under his covers, and he wakes up and he feels his clothing being removed, and he's paralyzed from the waist down. He said the pattern is there's 3 standing on the side of the short grays, and there's 1, and the 4th one has a black sort of cone or pyramid-shaped device, and he puts it over his naked groin, and he says instantly, as soon as it touches the groin area, you go blank. He says everything goes dark. And he says there's no sexual pleasure involved. It's like some sort of clinical procedure. And he says it happened the first time, and go to the next slide. And it keeps happening again. And it keeps happening again. So many of those visits, more than just 3 of those 3 slides, he said they happen many times because we have a 4-year period here. So then March 2021, a really interesting one. He's woken up. He goes to bed in the normal manner. He wakes up on a cold table, and he's naked. And the alien says, we're giving you a new implant. Be careful with this one, or we won't be able to find you. And that really piqued my curiosity because I've had many cases of claimed alien implants or even genuine alien implants that get removed and then they immediately disappear after they get removed. But I've never heard of a case where the alien says, hey, here's the implant. We're about to put this in you. And I said, really? That's what really happened? And I said, they showed you the implant? And he said, well, yeah, kind of. I said, what do you mean by kind of? He says, well, I said, well, what did the implant look like? He said, well, you wouldn't believe me if I tell you. And I said, well, try me. He said, it looked like a vacuum tube from an old television set or radio. And I said, so you're telling me the aliens are putting vacuum tubes in you? He said, no. He said, screened images, remember? He said, they're showing me that they're going to put some kind of device in me, and it's vaguely technical, but not too threatening, and I shouldn't be alarmed. And they think my brain can only handle it as maybe a vacuum tube. And I said, so, have you had a scan? Have you looked? He says, I don't feel like there's any implants, and I don't have a health plan that'll pay for the scans.
Yeah.
So that's it on that, but it was very interesting. So July 2022, this is the most horrifying one of all. He goes to bed wearing his pajamas, again, tucked under the covers. He wakes up completely naked on a cold metal table, and his left arm hurts like hell. And he's paralyzed from the shoulders down, but he has movement of his head. And so he looks down to try to figure out, why is my arm hurting? And he's horrified to see that his arm is missing completely, and it's just cleaved off neat and clean. And then his second kind of brain shock is, where's all the blood? There should be like blood spurting out everywhere. And I said, really? There was no blood at all? He said, 1 drop, maybe 2. But he said, basically, there was no blood. And he said, but then I sensed movement farther off to my left. So he said, it's the lighting in this room. He said, the lighting in all the alien environments is very dim. He thinks the large grays can't handle really bright lights, or natural sun is a theory of his. So he senses movement off to his left, so he cranes his neck farther to the left, and he sees an alien working on something in a tray, and then he really, really stretches his neck to the muscles to the max to see what's in the tray, and he's horrified to see that it's his own arm. But an interesting thing was, there was a piece of the humerus bone sticking out of the arm about maybe 2 or 3 inches. So it wasn't like if you took a meat cleaver and chopped the arm off, that would chop right through the bone. But this was done in such a way that it pulled the bone, it separated the bone from farther up while cutting all the meat of the flesh. Yeah. And he said the alien had some kind of device, like a pen or a wand, and he was digging into the center of the bone, which could only be for bone marrow. And he goes, I don't know if he was putting something in the bone marrow or taking something out of the bone marrow. And he says, basically after that, I don't know whether they blacked me out or I just fainted. And he woke up the next morning back in his bed. However, he wakes up back in his bed, and his arm hurts. And he wakes up in the morning, and he looks to see if his arm is attached after having he has total recall of that visit. And so he looks to see if his arm is attached, and it is attached. There's no stitches, there's no blood, but the arm hurts, and it does hurt. So he gets up out of bed the morning after, the immediate morning after, and he goes to take a shower. And while he's in the shower, his range of motion in the arm starts getting less and less, and then it locks up completely, and he can't move his arm at all. And somehow the aliens seem to know that something went wrong on this arm, because 1 week later he's abducted again, and he wakes up, and this time not on a hard cold table, but on a comfy white mattress, and he's being told telepathically, just look to your right, just look to your right. And he senses that there's somebody working on his arm on the left, and every time he tries to look over there, he kind of gets a hint of a tall gray doing something, but he's told, just look to your right, just look to your right. And when he does, he finds that there's a small female alien in a black jumpsuit who's holding his hand and laying right next to him. And he looks her in the eyes, and she looks back at him, and there's kind of a lull there. And finally, he telepathically hears from the female alien. She says, quote, is there something you would like to tell me? And Erik's not quite sure how to process that. What's she asking? And then he's thinking, well, is this alien female coming on to me? and you know, in a moment of sort of abduction, punch drunk whimsy, his witty response that he wasn't trying to be witty, he says, well, I'm not married or anything, was the answer he gave her. Whatever they do on that visit doesn't work, because he wakes up the next morning and his arm still hurts, although there's a little bit more range of motion. 1 week again, another week later, he gets abducted a second time, has a second experience, the same with the female alien, and he's told, just look to your right. And after about a month, then he gets put back again. And then after about 30 days, he said the arm went completely back to normal, and he has full use of the arm. But he goes, it was kind of 30 days of hell, especially the first 2 or 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. All right. So now we get to a very interesting period. 2022, the missing pregnancy. Yep. So it's now 2022. Erik has a girlfriend, and this girlfriend is a physician. And we're going to call her Samantha, which is not her real name. And as a couple, they become very sexually active. And Samantha becomes pregnant with an expected due date of January 2023, medically confirmed. However, in the 9th week of pregnancy, Samantha has a miscarriage. And in examining her own expelled tissue, Samantha finds that there's neither a fetus or a fluid-filled sac. And as a physician, she's medically concerned because if you do have a miscarriage and you don't expel a tissue, that's bad if there's some left in there. And so she goes to see an obstetrician, and the obstetrician says, I can confirm you've recently been pregnant, but everything is empty and normal. You're good to go. There is no remaining tissue. So there's a bit of a quandary. The two of them are like, well, where's the fetus? And neither of them know the answer. And then Erik says sort of an uh-oh thought. And now throughout the relationship, Erik has been gently sort of breaking his ET experiences to his physician girlfriend, who's a trained scientist. And he characterizes her response in the relationship to the ET thing. She was an open-minded, sympathetic skeptic on the ET phenomenon. But he now says to her after the miscarriage, well, you know, they've been, as I've been telling you, they've been coming every month or so for my semen. Perhaps they took the fetus as well because it's partly my genetic material. And as you can imagine, Samantha doesn't like that idea at all. She's extremely uncomfortable with that idea. But about a year after the miscarriage, it's now June of 2023. Erik is abducted again. And he wakes up standing upright in what feels like the upper level of an air traffic control tower. And he said there's windows all around. He was facing a very tall alien. And in the center of the room, there's a metal table with a 5 to 6 month old baby crawling around on it. So this is June of 2023. And when was his baby due? Do you remember from 2 slides ago? January, right. And there's a male baby crawling around on the table, and he's told he is yours. And so Erik went to a great pains to reconstruct what this room looked like, this air traffic control tower. And I've had hybrid baby cases before, but I've never had a Windows case where there's windows in the alien environment. So I was nerding out as a MUFON investigator about the windows. And I said, really? There were windows? He said, yeah. And I said, so what did you see through them? And he said, nothing. I said, what do you mean nothing? I said, were they windows or not? He goes, they were windows. And I said, well, what was on the other side? And I was hoping he'd say something interesting like stars and planets whizzing by. And he said, it was just blue-gray out there. So my hypothesis is they're still in the Earth's atmosphere somewhere, hanging around. But back to the alien baby. Next slide. Erik is told he is yours, but he has a genetic problem. You are here because we need more samples from you to correct his problem. And do you remember the beginning of the slide deck where we talked about his daughter, his Earth daughter? Mm-hmm. And what is the issue there?
Autism.
And if this is another baby, there could be a connection there. So to me, this was a good marker because it kind of, in my mind, dovetails with the genetic issues he's having with the Earth daughter that he already has, who's an adult and living on her own in an autistic adult community. So you are here because we need more samples from you to correct his problem, which tells you something about their science. Erik then goes unconscious and wakes up later in his bed, but now he has a moral dilemma because he doesn't know how and what to tell the mother Samantha because he and Samantha are no longer an item. They broke up. So what would you do? Next slide. Okay, so, but again, a page has been turned, and I guess his reaction to the hybrid stuff wasn't alarming to the Greys, because on his regular 5 to 6 week abductions, he's shown more and more of the hybrid phenomena. And on one of those visits, he asked if he can hold his son, and he said, more than the arm being severed, which was horrifying, this one cut me to the quick. He saw his son again, and he said, can I hold my son? And they told him firmly no. And he said, why not? And the word-for-word answer he received is, because he is a child of both worlds. He is half us and half hairy ape. He does not belong in your world.
Oh, my God.
And his immediate take on that was being offended at being thought of as a hairy ape.
Yeah.
But from their point of view, you know, there's a theory out there that seems to be getting more and more credence. You know, evolution is a true thing, but we had some jumps in our evolution that quite can't be explained. And, you know, it's not, if you can subscribe to the ancient alien theory, it's quite likely that our DNA was tinkered with at some point. Mm-hmm. So on another visit, Erik says, where do you keep these babies? And this is the part where I kind of fell off my chair.
Yeah.
This is the part.
Watch this.
Finally, you had enough.
I just want to move just a little bit faster, but this is very important, this part.
Yeah, we're coming up pretty close. Okay.
Good.
We could spend 45 minutes talking about this slide alone, but basically he's told for the area you live in, so he's led to believe this is not for the whole planet Earth. The hybrid babies are kept in three underground tunnels that run north and south in eastern Illinois because of the rock composition there. And it's not, they're so deep down you can't get to them with surface excavating equipment. They're heated by the natural heat of the earth. And they dip down, they curve downwards on the southern end. And he was showing all sorts of information on this. And we'll have to skip the details here, but let's go to the next one. Okay. During one abduction, Erik wakes up and he's initially shown a solid gray wall, and it's nothing. It's just a gray wall. And then all of a sudden, these screens start popping up on the gray wall. He said there were 3 rows of screens, about 18 to 24 images. Is
that the next image?
Yeah, but let me get through
okay.
The words on this part.
Sorry.
Yeah. He's shown the 3 rows of screens, and he's told he sees that the hybrids are various ages from infants all the way to adults. And he's told all of these are yours now. So I guess we know what they've been doing with those collection visits. So he asks if they have names, and he said they seem somewhat amused by that concept. And he's told, no, would you like to name them? So he decides in sort of a moment of punch-drunk whimsy, my gosh, I got to come up with like 25 names on the fly. Well, look where I am. Okay, so now go to the next slide. So he decides to use Star Trek names because that's all he can think of on the fly really fast. So he starts pointing and going down the line. And he said, well, let's make that one Kirk, that's Spock, that's McCoy, that's Picard, that's Counselor Troy, that's Data. And I said, so did you get to the end of naming them all? He said, no. I said, why not? He said they kind of started like laughing. I said, laughing? Really? He said, well, not exactly laughing, but I could telepathically tell they were highly amused. And I said, so you're telling me they understood these names? And he said, yes. And I said, so you're telling me they understood that cultural reference? And he said, yeah. And I said, so you're telling me the aliens watch our old TV shows? And he said, no. And he said, but they know that I watch those old TV shows and they can see inside my head and they understand its association in my head. And before he could get to the end, everything goes black and the naming thing is cut off and he wakes up back in his bed. Next slide. So now we come pretty much to the end here. August of 2023, he has one more abduction, and this one feels very different than all the other ones. He kind of feels like he's in some sort of alien medical school class. He's surrounded by about 12 aliens that are standing along the wall, and they're watching him, and they're talking to each other while they're observing him, and he can hear it all telepathically, and it's just a lot of noise. So he kind of yells out telepathically himself, "Could you please be quiet?" And there's another alien that we're going to call the Doctor Alien, who is sitting in front of him, and he's examining his torso and working his hands up and down. And he said it kind of felt like this was sort of maybe an end of a period kind of thing. Like this was like a discharge medical exam. Like when you leave the military, they give you a final medical exam as a part of your discharge. He said it kind of had that feel to it. Like this is the end of the lab rat period, and we're going to check him out one more time before we put him back under the cloak again or something. So go to the next slide. So this is kind of the environment. He spent a lot of time reconstructing it. He said there was the same ribbed walls that he'd seen in other prior abductions along the wall. The room looked very familiar. He said the aliens are standing along the wall. The Doctor Alien is like moving his hands up and down his torso. But at one point, the doctor gets concerned and stands up and goes into that white doorway. And he says, he walked in there and he wasn't sure if it was like an elevator or a doorway to something, but he kind of like got lost in the bright white light for a few seconds. And then he came back out of the bright white light, came back and sat down. And go to the next slide. And now back on Earth, Erik suffers from a common earthly ailment called GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux disease. And it comes from a thing called H. pylori bacteria, which is a common cause of peptic ulcers. And it's also a known risk factor for stomach cancer.
Yeah.
And the alien, Dr. Alien, who's running his hands up and down his torso, seems to spend a lot of time in one particular area of his stomach. And in a peculiar choice of words, the alien says, "You have an enemy inside you, but you will feel better in a few days." And he does. And for the first time in his life, his GERD completely goes away. All right. So conclusion, the ERT considered this a substantial evidence case. It met the vast majority markers we look for in abduction cases. It's worth further study, and so it has been. And Erik continues to live his life in a normal manner, and his overall intellect and honesty and humility make him a highly credible, level-headed witness. And he offers this case not for publicity or fame. And yes, he has written 2 books now, but that kind of came after the fact, and he's not trying to make $1 million. He wants to offer his story to the public so that others who've had this may know that they are not alone. And the real punchline here is this, and as an ERT guy, I can tell you this story can happen to anyone. And that's it.
Wow.
Wow, that is really, what a case. Just from what it portrayed and what it said. Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
We could, like you said, we could spend more time on any of that stuff than anything else. So one of the things I wanted to make sure. So this is when you were, this is when you were at the symposium. You gave the same case discussion talk at the symposium, which was really cool. This is Erik, right? And this is the book that we were talking about.
It's and
he's, as you know, when the Ancient Alien show came out that you said I think it was on the 21st of September, he was on there. He gave his version, if you will, for the most part about what was his story. And I thought it was a really cool story, to be honest with you. By the way, I wish we had a little bit more time, but Tim, we really, really appreciate you coming on, sharing your background, sharing your story, the work you do at MUFON. I know you've done other cases that were renowned and at previous symposiums, and we need to have you on again to discuss those. But you laid it out pretty well. You showed the public what we do. You gave them a very good example of the type of things that are happening to people. Is there any final words that you'd like to say before we go to a conclusion?
No, I think we covered it all. I have another case from the prior year that was selected that was also presented at the symposium the year before. If you're ever interested for a future session, we can go over that one. But no, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think you hit the nails right on the head about what the takeaways are.
And I will tell you, I really want to go and listen to the one from the year before, because I also did a presentation that year, but yours was incredible. And I would love for people to hear that particular case. So we will have you back on. So any final comments or thoughts before we let you go?
Me,
No.
Tim, Richard?
No, Tim, and then we're going to let CJ and I finish.
No, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to tell a story. It's not my story, it's Erik's story. I just have the honor of presenting it. And thank you for the God's work that you guys are doing for MUFON and carrying on the Earl Grey tradition and out there in California. And for the coast to coast for the rest of the country and the world.
Thank you very much, too, for being on our show. So take care.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Alrighty.
Just some final thoughts. CJ, anything?
No, we'll just see you guys in 2 weeks.
Okay, sometimes you fall down because there's something down there that you're supposed to find. Take care, everybody. See you next time.